Hey guys, welcome to our video on the Woodwinds, which, to my opinion, are the most slept on group in the orchestra. I freaking love the Woodwinds. So let's get into it. Now, we are going to start again with just how these are constructed in the orchestra, how many there are, and then some general like strengths and weaknesses, maybe some rules of thumb, and then examples of their articulations and how they sound like in real life. Again, we are using the 8DO, so let's get into it. First, you have your flutes. Your flutes are like your violins, like your sopranos. Then you have your oboes, and your oboes are like your violas, and those are like your altos. And then you have your clarinets, which are like your cellos, which are like your tenors. And then you have your bassoons, which is like your contrabass, which is like your bass. Now, how many, again, should be within an orchestra? Usually between 2 and 4 of each. And you can pair them up, you can put them together in 3s, you can put them together in 4s. They're actually really flexible in how you want to pair them. Now there's some special instruments which I'll touch on, even though BBC doesn't have them, they're still worth knowing. So you have the piccolo for the flute, which is like a really, really high version of the flute, for lack of a better term. You have what is my favorite woodwind instrument, and probably one of my favorite instruments in the orchestra, is the English horn. I think it kind of sounds like a cross between an oboe and a clarinet. Like it's still got a little bit of that nasaliness of the oboe, but it's a little bit warmer. For clarinets, you actually have a bass clarinet, and for bassoon, you have a double bassoon, which is like an even bassier bassoon. So there you go. Now, what are some of the strengths of the woodwinds? The woodwinds, to me, are like your coloring book of the orchestra. You know, the strings, you have different articulations, but a string is going to sound like a string is going to sound like a string, you know? And a brass is always going to sound like brass. But the woodwinds, they sound so different from each other. Like an oboe is markedly different from a flute, and is markedly different from a bassoon, and is markedly different from a clarinet. You also have them playing in their different registers. So whereas a bassoon playing really high sounds almost like mocking, and I mean that in a good way, but played low can sound very somber and just meaty. Your clarinet has this beautiful like silvery tone in its mid-register, and then gets a little bit nasally the higher up you go. I mean, there's just so much that you can do, and I really encourage you to open up and listen to a bunch of woodwinds, because I mean, they just have so much character that can be used to create new colors in your orchestra that, I mean, you may not even realize was possible. So now, what's their weaknesses? Well, they're not as dexterous as the strings. You know, these are keys, and the fingerings can be a little bit weird sometimes. They're not as powerful. They are, as far as loudness in the orchestra, the weakest instruments that you have. There's not as much expression. So whereas strings and brass, you can start very soft and really blast it loud. You can't really do that with woodwinds. There's only so much forte, and forte, by the way, piano, forte, these are different measurements of loudness in the orchestra. Finally, it's hard to do really big leaps on some of these instruments like the clarinet. So some rules of thumb, you know, they're all of equal pattern, same thing with the string, equal power, same thing with the strings, you know, so a flute, one flute is as loud as one oboe, which is as loud as one clarinet, which is as loud as one bassoon. Their middle registers for each of these have the greatest power, but the outside registers also have really unique coloring. So that's a trade-off that you may have to make. Double reed instruments. So your oboe and your bassoon. Your single reeds is really your clarinet. Your flute doesn't have a reed, but your double reeds, your oboe and your bassoon, your alto and your bass, are pretty nasally and a little bit darker. The counterparts, like your flute and your clarinet, tend to be brighter and a little bit more flexible. Your oboes and your bassoons tend to be used as doubling, so they'll play the same notes or maybe octaves apart from your flutes and your clarinets and a lot of your strings. They're going to be used to either tie them into the rest of the orchestra or to add color. Again, they have their own parts, but a lot of times they will be there more as color instruments as well. So don't sleep on that ability. And then finally, quick trills and arpeggios. Remember, arpeggios are chords that are broken up. Tend to work better on your non-double reed instruments. So think your flutes and your clarinets. They tend to just be a little bit more flexible. So now let's hear how they sound together. What about articulations? I mean, there's so many that you can use. This patch doesn't have them all, but has a couple. So, you know, staccissimo is same with strings. Quick hits, marcato, a little bit stronger, a little bit more forceful than just like your standard legato, right? You can also have flutters, which I don't have a patch on here that does that specifically, but they use their tongue to like go like with it, which is really cool. That sounded super weird. Overblowing is you get more of like a grit, a growl to it. You know, there's trills, which same thing with the strings. They're playing, you know, either minor second or major second or something else very fast back and forth. But they also do runs, which are really cool. So again, what I had played before. Great. Oh, this is cool. You can hear spit in this. Valve clicks, that's kind of neat. Anyway, yeah, so those are just some of the articulations that they have. This is all C major. And what I did with the winds is we have the same amount of instruments playing each. But the first C major is going to be 2 flutes. The second is going to be actually, I have 2 flutes for both of them, but they're going to be, one's going to be more of an open voicing, the other one's going to be a closed voicing. After that, I'm going to play 2 oboes, then I'm going to play 2 clarinets, and then 2 bassoons. And I want you to, for these first 2, just hear the difference of how like an open versus a closed voicing is going to sound. And then after that, compare how by doubling instruments and bringing one out more is going to adjust the color of the exact same chord. Open voicing, this is closed voicing. They both work, although I would say the closed voicing with the woodwinds tends to work a little bit better. Again, especially the louder it goes. It's just not as in your face. So for woodwinds, I tend to use closed voicing, but again, none of these are hard and fast rules. All right, so let's listen to that one again, because now we're gonna go closed voicings, but this one again is double flute. This one is double oboe. This one is double clarinet. And this one is double bassoon. I mean, just versus, but you can hear like some get more nasally. You can hear more of the ooh, and this one from the clarinet. I mean, again, they're so good at coloring the orchestral landscape. Finally, I just took a quick minor scale run with both of these together so you can hear. So I'm going to mute the oboe, and I'm going to put the oboe in with that. I mean, you're just, it's a color thing. These instruments are so good at coloring with each other. So with just the oboe, with both of them, I mean, so really use them. They are, I know I've said this like a million times, they are so good with colors. And you know, usually when people are writing orchestra for video games, they're thinking brass or like lush strings, but they sleep. Oh my gosh, do they sleep on the woodwinds? And don't. I mean, first of all, woodwind players do not get enough love. They don't. By the way, if you're a single woodwind player, hit me up, assuming I'm still single. whatever. Don't sleep on woodwinds, they're phenomenal. So, your homework. Same thing as the strings. Pick a chord, play with different voicings, play with how many of each instrument play. 2 to 1 to 1 to 1, or 3 to 1 to 1, or 3 to 2 to 2, like whatever. Play with it and practice hearing the colors of each of these instruments. And furthermore, when you color them, try making it to where one of those instruments is in extreme range. I will see you in the next lesson.